This conference will now be recorded.
Regarding the contract, the requirement is, the state requirement for UDO and land use is July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2022. The 21 for the UDO and 22 for the land use. And that was the only change that I saw. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, if there's no other changes, then let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Can I get a
Quick question, are we approving them based off of what we have plus your change, or just what we have?
including my change?
Including your change, okay.
Okay, does somebody want to make a motion to?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second Bruce.
Okay, okay, the motion is was seconded. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Vote to approve the meeting minutes from May. Sarah Wax is a yes.
Yes.
Cameron Watts is a yes. Susan Hall is a yes. Bruce?
Yes. Sorry.
Bruce Williams is a
Yes.
Okay, so the vote carries and the meeting minutes from May 4th, 2021 Planning Board meeting is approved. We have nothing else on the agenda. I did want to talk about a couple of things that that we probably haven't had a chance to talk about yet, because we kind of got into this very quickly with the, we have a couple of CSPs that we had to look over, and then we had the UDO come up. So the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about, kind of what we're doing here. Can you bring up the presentation? The first thing I want to say is that this is very casual. So if you want to ask a question, add anything, including Mike and Will, please speak up. First slide, please. That's okay. Okay, first of all, I just want to thank you for your willingness to serve. The future of our community depends on people getting involved. We all know that, right? Small community relies on each of us. I want to be clear that our central duty is to determine how we balance the public good with private rights and interests. Right? I think it was somebody in one of the meetings recently that made a point of saying that they were really a champion of property rights. And we have to keep that in mind, right? What's important to the individual property owner or the business owner, and what's important to the town as a whole. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's expected of each of us? Well, we're expected to follow the rules of procedure for our board. We should all be contributing to the meetings in some kind of constructive way. We should show up on time and arrive on time. We should absolutely always keep an open mind, treat each other, the board members, the staff, and everyone who comes up before us, including any citizens, residents, business owners, potential business owners, anybody that comes before the board. Be active listeners, display good ethical behaviors by avoiding the pursuit of special privileges, right? I'd also like everybody to start taking advantage of some training that's available to us. I wish Zach was here because he is a UNC School of Government graduate, I believe 2 times. I think his master's is from there too. So he has, probably has a lot of good information to share. But I found tons of good information on that website, including a great set of little vignettes they're all like between 10 and 20 minutes, all about exactly what the town is doing now regarding the D1, the 160D, the UDO, the land use plans, And then there's a couple of other ones that talk specifically about planning. And it was just an eye opener, but they were terrific because they were so short that, they were able to, kind of hold my attention and answer, some questions that I had. Always seek to ascertain the public interest and how best to further the interests of the community as a whole. I said that on the first slide. I'm saying it on the second slide. It's because it's what we do. It's what's most important. Next slide, please. What's our source of authority? Well, the first one is the general statute 160D 301 that tells us what the planning board compositions are. Now, if you go and look at that, you'll see that it kind of gives a boilerplate of what a planning board does in municipalities. Depending on the size of the municipality, then they're given this gives every town and city an opportunity to kind of scale it to them. And that's what Cape Carteret has done, and that's why we're comprised the way we are. Exactly what we do is established by our Code of Ordinance, and that tells us exactly how we're supposed to perform our duties. And it's listed in 152, chapter 152. So everything that we are responsible for, we're going to find in 152, 154, and 156. So it's pretty easy to kind of get in there and understand what the planning board is doing. Next slide, please. There's one last thing I want to say. If you go online and look at the state statute 160D, it really is put together well, and it's easy to read, it's easy to navigate. So if there's something that you're trying to find and you're having difficulty right now finding it in our Code of Ordinance, it's worth it to go ahead and go to the state statute, because we're in the middle of aligning our Code of Ordinance to that state statute, right? That's the whole point. Let's talk a little bit about what our powers and duties are. This is from 152, chapter 152, the powers and duties of our planning board. This is for this town, not the state. This is for this town. I'll just give you, a second to kind of look through it, but basically it says that we're just going to exactly what we've been doing, right? Collect information regarding plans that may come up, and we're going to balance that, make sure that plans are comprehensive, make sure that a physical development is in accordance with all of the ordinance that we have. One of our duties is establishing principles and policies for guiding action of development in the area. So really, that is kind of happening in the land use plan that's being developed now. Our job is going to be really to take that land use plan and kind of give it legs with everything that we're executing here. One of our duties is to keep the Board of Commissioners informed. So whatever we're doing, we want to make sure that we're preparing for them enough information in with what we're doing so that they have the ability to make a good decision and to take a vote on it and move it forward, or say no, right, one or the other. Of course, we know that we're going to determine whether specific proposed developments conform. Always keep the Board of Commissioners and the public informed. Okay, really important that we are going out there, talking to our neighbors, talking when we're standing in line in Lowe's. If you go down to the park, you're talking to somebody. If you see somebody with children, say, hey, the park's, working for your family. If you see this, one of our parks has, a parking lot filled, and, be aware enough to say, hey, is a parking lot working for you? Whatever it is, right? So we just want to make sure that we're collecting all the information we need to give that to the Board of Commissioners in case they need to make a change on anything. And of course, we're going to perform any other duties that may be lawfully assigned to us. And everything we do is assigned to us by the Board of Commissioners. Every job we do. It's not just looking over a site plan and approving or disapproving. Right? It's whatever they want to hand us. And it's important that we be prepared for that. And that's why I ask that you guys go ahead and look at that website I gave you for the School of Government. Okay, next slide, please. Something else we do is the zoning amendments. The planning board shall prepare and submit consideration of possible adoption of a zoning ordinance. Now, in reality, all of this is done, right? We already have this, but there may come a time when we're going to ask to make a change on it. And that would be our responsibility. We may initiate from time to time proposals to the amendment of the zoning ordinance. The map, Paxton came in today with a map that is, she feels is kind of just not working for her regarding one of our rules in town. And that may be something that this board can look at and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. I don't really know.
It appears the map is incorrect.
So yeah, so we obviously, if it's incorrect, we want to update it. This is also something we should be doing right now regarding the UDO and the land use plans. We're also going through all the maps because they become appendices in the UDO and land use plan. Next slide, please. Public facilities. This I found very interesting. Okay. The planning board shall review with the major and other town officials and report its recommendations to the board on the acquisition and disposal of public properties, on the establishment of building lines, map, tree lines, so on and so forth. I didn't know about this. In the absence of a recommendation, then everything is kind of just automatically approved within 30 days. It's important that we understand there's two different times when if we snooze, we lose, right? If somebody comes and asks us for something and we don't answer them officially in a period of time, depending on what it is, sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 60, then it's automatically approved. And that's why it's so important that one of the things we do here is meeting once a month. Just because we don't have anything on the agenda doesn't mean we don't meet, or that we don't discuss something, or that we don't investigate something. Okay, next one. The planning board may conduct public hearings. That's what we're doing here. Okay, everything we do is a public hearing on the planning board. I know that there's times when the Board of Commissioners have to meet in private, and I'm not clear on what the reason is for that. I don't know if it's to discuss the sale of a property or whatever the case may be, but that will never happen with us. Everything we do is in public. Okay. And again, our planning board should hold at least one public meeting for everything we do. Okay, before we do it, before we make a decision, there should be a public hearing on it. Normally, what's happened here is it all happens at the same time, right? So we have it where we send out a site plan, we review it on our own, hopefully before we come to the meeting. We review it in the meeting, and we're open to the public. So the public hearing is really happening, and the approval is happening all at the same time. But it is important that we make sure that, and this is another way that we're keeping the public informed of exactly what we're doing. The more we do that, the more we talk to the public, the more we let people know, hey, we're having a planning board meeting, please come, then the more people will start to trust the process. Because right now, I don't know if you guys look at social media, but there is a real distrust of the entire process, whether it's the planning board, and I get beat up pretty bad about it, whether it's the planning board or the Board of Commissioners in town. And I just saw something the other day about the County Board of Commissioners. Now, these are all citizens of our county. These are our neighbors, okay? It's important that we that we keep each other informed so everybody does not feel like they're kind of getting, kind of squeezed out or iced on information. Okay. Next slide, please. Here's something else I thought was interesting. The planning board may seek to establish an unofficial advisory council and cooperate with the council, so on and so forth. So in the event that the planning board, if we come up with some bright idea that we want to pursue as an official body, it falls to us to go ahead and seek perhaps a group of people, and I'm going to talk more about this later, a group of citizens that might help kind of to steer us in which direction that we are going in. We could have an official advisory councils, and we could even have an actual official one, but to have any official advisory council would require us to go to the Board of Commissioners for that. But there's nothing that stops us from putting together our own little group. If we want to, pick somebody from each area of town and use them for input, when we have something going on. Next slide, please. Another thing I didn't know about. Okay, so in 154, it talks about variances. Now, variances basically, if you're going to do something outside the existing ordinance, right? Like, a setback or something, that you want to do something with that isn't in accordance with the ordinance. So it says here, the planning board may recommend and the Board of Commissioners may authorize a variance so that the subdivider, that's the person who's doing anything to the piece of property, may develop his or her property in a reasonable manner. Now, the interesting thing about this is I was under the impression that the only group that could grant a variance was the Board of Adjustment. So, but this is right out of our code of ordinance. So either we need to make a change to our code of ordinance to reflect the way we're doing it in town, or we need to, on the planning board, we need to be more aware of what variances may be realistic. I kind of felt like when the first one we did, I believe, was John McLean's property over here. And I was very clear, we are not authorized to give you a variance on anything. That's what I told him. It would have to go to the Board of Adjustment, to the Board of Commissioners or whatever. But right here in our ordinance, it tells us that we can. Obviously, we've got to have some boundaries to bump up against. We can't just be giving variances on anything. But this is something that we probably need to investigate a little bit more and discuss a little bit more to make that change to the code of ordinance, or leave it the way it is.
A question, Susan. Susan, I got a question. And
Sure.
it relates to the example that you used, because that came to my mind about the fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through how we might have handled that differently now that we see that we have the power to make recommendation?
Well, honestly, in that case, I would have considered that such a significant variance, because it meant what we were talking about in that was not just one single variance for that situation, right? It was to make a change to the code of ordinance on the overall ordinance itself, based on the water infrastructure, not supporting it.
Right.
So what I would say about that is if that was, in reality, if that was just one single instance where he just happened to have a piece of property that was so peculiar that only that property could not meet that requirement, then I would say we probably would have, had I known better at the time, I would have entertained it. Does that make sense? Because it would have been just that one variance.
All right, so we just need to take into consideration the scope of what a variance may affect.
Right, right.
I mean, that's just one of the considerations.
So I guess a way to say it is that we could consider a variance for a specific piece of property, but we do not have and of course we don't have the authority to grant a variance, right? We just would send that to the Board of Commissioners, right? We would consider it, vote on it, collect some good information on it before doing so. And then the Board of Commissioners would decide on it. But we absolutely don't have the authority to just go ahead and say, we're going to, throw this this part of the ordinance out. So that's kind of where that was a little different.
Question.
Yeah.
Then are we getting ready to throw the Board of Adjustment out?
Oh, no. No, why would we?
Because they're separate from the Board of Commissioners and they are a quasi-judicial board.
So it's interesting that you asked that question, and I'll tell you why. After going through those little training modules I was talking about, one of the things that it talks about is that the planning board is you could have the planning board could really do the job of the Board of Adjustment, right? So that's not how we operate here in town, right? We have two very separate entities, and they operate completely differently. But the state statute does allow for those two things. So the planning board, as we sit, would be the legislative action, and the Board of Adjustments would be the quasi-judicial. So that's how we're set up here. But the state statute is actually set up to allow both of those actions to happen within the planning board. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that's the conflict in this town.
No, it's not conflict. The state statute gives a lot of leeway in some ways. It gives a lot of leeway. Other ways, it gives you no choice. The state statute gives municipalities the ability to tailor those, the statute's requirements gives those municipalities the ability to tailor it to their specific needs. And that's the way that was set up. I have no idea when it was set up this way. Mike, do you know, or Paxton, have we always had a Board of Adjustment and a planning board?
Yes.
I'm aware of that 154 that you put up there, and all the time I've been here, we've never used it.
Right.
Because all of the cases that came before were something, they were specific enough that they could be addressed by the Board of Adjustment. All of them have. We've never employed that, although I'm aware that these statutes give boards of commissioners that authority.
Well, then maybe that's something that we should consider as a board. And that's my next slide, right, 145. There are 145 instances in the Code of Ordinance for this town that the planning board is mentioned. So my challenge to you guys is to go to the Code of Ordinance, go to the search function, type in the word planning board, and start clicking through each one, okay? I'm telling you, it will not take you long, but it will give you a very interesting view of the scope of what this planning board does and doesn't do, right? Because things that are left out. But one of the things that I would say is one of that 145 is what we just talked about with that variance. As a planning board, one of our jobs, and one of those other 145s, is that we should be making recommendations to the change of ordinance. And maybe that's what we need to do at our next meeting. Maybe we need to go ahead and present a list of what changes need to be brought up. We could vote on it as a group, and then we'll send that to the Board of Commissioners. Or we could send it to, I could take it to the steering committee and include it for, the UDO. So there's kind of two ways to do that. We would have to, talk a little bit more about, how to go about that.
I would just ask, the last studio meeting I went to, it seemed like we're in that time crunch, we were shooting for that July 1st date. So has that changed or?
At this point, that July 1st date has not changed. I don't know, does anybody have any other information whether or not that date has gotten any more soft? So my understanding is that Zach's goal is to have this in the can by July 1st. And he's got good reasons for it. So what that means is that we're going to take a lot of changes to the UDO, or a lot of changes to the existing ordinance, and take all of that, put it into the new UDO, and then that will be reviewed by the Board of Commissioners. And at that point, all of those changes will be adopted, right? So in other words, if we say, okay, we're going to take out that, what was it, 154.15, I believe it was, that on variance, and say, this is not how we operate here, let's take this out. And that will be one of a list of tons of changes that will be going to the Board of Commissioners as part of, the overall vote on the UDO. Okay.
But just so you're asking us to derive a document?
Not a document. I'm asking you to go through that 140 times, 35 times, and read them to get a very clear understanding of the scope of what the planning board does. There's a lot of things I left out. I just kind of pulled out a couple of different things, and just to get a scope of that. And then as you go through, just in the couple of meetings that we've had, right? All of us have very little experience on this board. Just looking through this, you're going to say, holy cow, we don't do that. Holy cow, we don't do that. Right? The month of May is when the planning board chair is supposed to provide the annual budget for next year, and along with the financial statement of the year of what we spent. Well, we don't have a budget,
Exactly.
and we don't, and Zach doesn't want anything from me regarding what we've spent because we haven't spent anything. So that's another thing that we could take out. In other words, if we're not using it, let's get it out of there. If we can get this 378 pages of Code of Ordinance down to 178 pages, then let's do it. As long as everything in it is correct, it's valid, that's really what we're looking for. I don't want to see any confusion about what we should be doing versus what is written here. I don't want somebody to say, this is what you should be doing. I don't want one of the commissioners to say, well, this is your job as the chair. Meanwhile, or you're not allowed to do that. You're just the planning board. You can't do that. I want all of us to basically be singing off the same sheet of music. Okay. Okay, next slide. Okay. So we're done with that, all of our training stuff. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do that are completely unrelated to a commercial site plan, because that's all we've done at this point, right? So one of the things we want to do is always try to make the town better in any way that we can, right? And help develop whatever it is the land use plan is telling us we're going to do with the future of the town, right? Every town has a personality. And I think one of the things that reflects a personality is a motto, a town motto, right? Emerald Isle has nice manners. Now, one of the things I love about that is I've actually heard people in Emerald Isle, residents kind of check each other when, somebody said something, on social media especially, kind of a little snarky, and somebody would respond with, hey, nice manners, and I just think that's great. I love, the town of Emerald Isle, and I love being neighbors with them. And I love that when I came here just a couple of years ago, seeing that made me feel like, okay, now I get who they are. And it made me feel welcome when I go there. And I would like to see the same thing happen with our town, right? So I put up here a couple of slogans, right, that reflect things about the town. Las Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland rocks, right? That's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. Nashville is the music city. New York, the city that never sleeps. Hershey, the sweetest place on earth. I love that. Austin is keep Austin weird. And I just threw one up for Cape Carteret. Obviously, this is not what we're going to do. Crazy good boating. So just something that reflects what is it about our town? What makes our town great? It could be, the best Cub Scout troops. It could be anything, but what matters is something that will not only reflect our town, but will also help our residents, all of us, to be a little more cohesive. So we kind of have one way that we see ourselves, because there's really kind of a lot of divisiveness, I think, going on. I don't know where that came from, and people have told me, Susan, you're not going to change that. But I love this town, and I guess my goal is that everybody sees this town in the same light that I do. And I believe that everybody that's on this board, that's why you're serving, because you just love this town and you want it to be the best that it possibly can be, and you're willing to put in the time and energy to do that. And this is just a way to kind of advertise that. So this is something I would love to take on as a planning board, to come up with, some options to play around. This is where you employ an unofficial advisory council, and whatever we come up with, we pass it over to the Board of Commissioners, and they either give us a thumbs up or, off with their heads, one or the other, we just have to accept that. So next slide, please. Okay. So I think there's a lot going on with parks in town. And we've got parks that have never been developed, park property that's never been developed. We have parks that have fallen into disrepair. And we have a brand new park that, that we just purchased, and we're going to be putting a lot of, time, money into. So I think that, and this falls into one of our duties with, with what we should be doing in town. We should be providing input to the board, and we should be developing this, not just coming up with, some harebrained scheme like I have up here, but real actual plans on how to do something with these parks. And if we do that, then I would like to see us develop a Parks and Recs committee. And the reason I say that is because if you think about it, everything we have in town on Parks and Recs is really geared towards older people, right? There's nothing here for kids. We don't have a playground in town. We don't have a slide. We're not, a jungle gym, a little thing to, run across. So we have no playground equipment. We have a million places to fish. Now we've got a terrific, has anybody been down to the kayak ramp yet?
I haven't been done.
You're not supposed to go, so don't go.
Oh,
Because it's not over yet. So it really is amazing, right? I mean, I'm flabbergasted at what has been accomplished down there. It's spectacular. If you're a kayaker, right? But I mean, I go down there and I walk like to the end of that that pier, and I'm just looking for gators, right? That's all I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, mosquitoes and gators, if I want to, go out in a kayak, I'm just not brave enough to do it in there, although it's gorgeous and it will be great for kayakers. I would go from like Anita Fort Park and drag my kayak in there and paddle around a little bit. So, so we've got this, this great kayak ramp coming up. We've got amazing fishing. And then we've got a whole bunch of different places down on what I call the low side of town, because my house is at 19 feet above sea level. Here, I think it's like -6 inches on this side. There are a bunch of great little parks where when I walk with a friend down on this side of town, and sometimes we will just go down there and just stop and just sit a spell and just enjoy, the view. And there's nothing in these parks. It's just mowed grass and a lovely bench to just sit on. And it's wonderful. It's almost spiritual. I love doing it. So there's something for older people. There's something for kayakers. There's something for fishing. But again, there's just nothing for the little ones. And I really would like to see us expand our Parks and Rec opportunities to the little ones. And that's with playground equipment. We've got tons of, Zach would fit if he heard me suggesting that we put a playground out back here. But it is beautiful back here, and that's where it seems like everything that we do with children is actually back here on the back lawn. So it might be a nice opportunity, but we could talk about those kind of things. The other idea that I really liked is I would love to see a sandy beach. We've got how many parks do we have? 10 on the end of?
8.
8 on the end of town. And none of them have a place where kids can I'm talking little ones, the ones that you just, plop in the sand with a bucket and let them, get their feet wet. You don't necessarily want to when the kids are really little, you don't want to take them to the beach because you got to love so much crap down there. And, so a sandy beach at Anita, the reason I put Anita Fort is because there's no grass there. I think there's some camera rules. I'm sure somebody here can help me understand what the camera rules are. Basically, if there's grass growing, you have to leave the grass. Am I right? If there's grass growing at the water's edge.
Right. Or submerged aquatic vegetation. You can't cover it.
So there is nothing there at Anita Fort, right? All the other parks, there was.
There's grass up to the shoreline.
That's the one right there behind the town.
No, that's Manatee.
Wait, so you mean just regular grass, like lawn grass that somebody planted? Didn't we plant that?
There's grass. It's road grass.
Oh, I thought it was like the reedy kind of grass that grows out of the water. I didn't realize it was just.
And there's grass in all the parks. You don't have there's lots right there. Like parking. The actual park itself up to the water are grass.
So you're.
Have a little peninsula and it bends there on the tide when you go down the Manatee for that park. That's where I launched on my paddleboard.
Right.
A little bit beach area.
Right.
That's what I was gonna say, at Manatee at low tide, we've gone out there with the little kids and just fishing nets and they just play in the grass.
Well, then maybe maybe that's a better option is to try to develop that because it is a very, very inexpensive thing to do, right? All you need is to dump a couple of tons of nice sand, or a couple 100 tons, I guess. You're smiling, no? It's not that easy. But anyway, so that's my point is I would like to see something for smaller children.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because
I have smaller kids that do too. So
Mhm.
Definitely something that would be good.
yeah.
Right now, the closest thing for us is to go to Cedar Point or Western Park to actually play at a playground. So
Yeah.
something here.
Mhm.
I mean, and we even have a undeveloped lot in our neighborhood.
Well, that's another thing that we need to talk about, right? And that should be coming from us. It should be coming from us how do we plan to help and, take information from residents in those neighborhoods and all over town and kind of figure out what would best work for that park. Mike did a lot of work on this a couple of years back, and start to develop these parks, that we have, or redevelop any park that we have that is not being used for, either its intended purpose, or is there a lot of redundancy? Like, do we just have too many places to sit a spell, and not enough places, to run around? Do we have a place where, people will go down and just play a couple of games of cornhole, down the water's edge? Do we have a place to do that? Maybe, another area of town. After the last commissioners meeting, we did have a resident come and talk about, she was kind of disappointed in what one of the parks looked like, the one over in Quailwood. And I didn't even know that we had a park in Quailwood, right? So, I went and looked at it, and it is small, but it has a parking area. It has a little path to a picnic shelter, and it has a lovely swing, Unfortunately, it's covered with poop, because that's where the residents over there are walking their dog and not picking up. And it's not mowed, so it seems to have been overlooked by everybody, and that's why it's fallen into, that kind of condition.
Now, one thing I'll say is we do have a new public works
Yeah.
supervisor. So
Yeah.
he's making his rounds around. When that.
Well, that's not a slam on who's been doing what.
There's a new person, so
Yeah.
you see a little bit different.
Realistically, you only have so much manpower to spread around, right? Why should you expend 3 hours, of maintaining a park that nobody goes to? People got to make decisions on, how they want to. So that's all I'm saying is if we have some properties here in town that can better be, that we think could be better utilized, then that's up to us to come up with how that could happen and present that to the Board of Commissioners. Okay. I think that's the last slide, isn't it? Oh, no, I guess it wasn't. Okay, so my youngest just graduated a year ago from Crowtown High School. And the reason that I moved here to town was because it was so important to me that he go to Crowtown, I had already decided I was moving to Carteret County at that point. Then I had to make the decision what area to move in. While he was, and I loved Crowtown. It was the best decision we ever made. One of the things that he had to take was the civics course. Did you go to Crowtown, Sarah? Did you have to take the civics course? And bust your little fanny trying to find someplace to do your volunteer work? Because they take it very seriously over there, which I was happy about. And there were not a lot of opportunities for their volunteer time. I used the library over here a lot, and I was able to speak to the librarian, and my son went over there and volunteered his 10 hours at the library. But I think there's an opportunity for us to partner, or at least to be a place where those students can come, the students in our town, because this is their town, right? They should be able to come here and say, where can I volunteer to meet my civics requirement? And we should have something for them to do that. And maybe that means they can pick up trash at the park.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it means, different things they can do. Maybe they have to come, part of their civics course, they have to come to a meeting, right? A meeting like this would meet it. So that means that we would want to have something available to them to really be able to understand what's going on in the meetings. You know, they could check their box as they go, collect information. And I think that's a way for us to give back, right, to our kids. And for that, and to get them involved in what's going on in town. So I think there's some good opportunities there. I had mentioned to Zach one day, this is months ago, he had a concern because he needed some help getting something done on one of the setting up and breaking down something out back that they were actually doing for the kids. I think it might have been like the fall festival, that type of thing. And they just didn't have enough people, you know, to help out. And I said, well, you know, we've got all these kids that really need, you know, to set it up. And, you know, if you let the parents know or you let the school know, then, you know, they've got a place to go. You know, they just come right here in town. We have a list. This is what we need done. You know, pick your poison.
And also, being the Cub Master of
Mhm.
Pack 446, we do the exact same thing. We're always looking for opportunities
Really?
to, yeah. And they're actually harder to find. Like you said, they're harder to find than you think.
Yes, it was very difficult.
We do a cleanup at Hammocks Beach, the park area where you drive up to.
Mhm.
We do like a cleanup around the whole facility. I mean, I have 50 some kids, and we task them according to their age.
Mhm.
And so, but we're always looking for things, and this is right here in our community.
Right,
So we
right.
love doing stuff like that.
So what's important for us is when we come up with these bright ideas, is that we come up with a comprehensive plan before we present it to the Board of Commissioners. So they really understand, you know, is it just going to be one more thing that, you know, the people in the town office have to do, right? A volunteer program should not have to be run by anybody in the town office, right? We should have some type of volunteer coordinator that, you know, would help to do that. So that would be my goal, is that it wouldn't add any burden onto town hall. It would actually relieve some of their burden.
Right on.
So,
I think that's good.
is there anything else?
That's it.
That was it. Okay, so that's my spiel.
Taking me back to variances real quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I was correct before I spoke. Statutorily, if you have a board of adjustments, the planning board will not hear. I want to come on to statute. If you have a board of adjustments, which we do,
Right.
it will not come before planning.
So that's kind of what I got out of it as well. But that's what it says in our code of ordinance.
Something like you were saying, look into to get out of.
So we probably need to, yeah, you know, just one more thing that we could afford to pull out. We would recommend that, yeah. And we could either go through and give all of our planning board recommendations at one time right now to make it easier, or we can, you know, death by 1,000 cuts, right? Every planning board, you know, we do, you know, a couple of little changes. But I would rather get as much of this out of there that's just fluff, or really is not even correct. You know, just get it out of there in one fell swoop if we can. Okay? So go back and look at that 145. It does not take as long as you think.
Yeah.
When would you like that by?
I would like to see it by the next meeting. So I would say we need to coordinate with each other before then, as we go. And I will talk to Barbara about how we do that. You know, how we can coordinate with each other without breaking like the core rules. And then, because if we have everything together and we could vote on what we're going to send to the Board of Commissioners, or maybe the answer is just once we have our little dealio together, then we just send that to Zach and say, this is kind of what we've put together for changes.
Any other update on the video? Was there another steering,
So there is a steering committee meeting, which is a public meeting, and I encourage everyone to go, and that's on the 10th, on June 10th. And I cannot remember. Let me check what the time was on. I do not have the time yet on it, but it is June 10th. So that's the public meeting. And then next week, we're having a steering committee only meeting to talk about what our changes are to the first rough draft. So the next couple of weeks, it's going to start coming probably, pretty fast and furious as far as drafts go. We'll probably start seeing like one draft a week over the next couple of weeks. And then it will all start looking better. But right now it's rough. So,
And then I just want to say, I'm on any Parks and Rec committee that.
well, what I'm hoping is that it will be a committee of people other than us, right? Because we would have to help, kind of guide what we're looking for from them. It may be that we don't need a committee to do it. It may be that we have, with who we have on the board, we kind of feel like we have enough information and enough people to go to casually, But if anything, anything we do would be an unofficial committee. Any official committee, we would have to put together. I would put together a proposal with you guys to, asking for an official committee and take that to the Board of Commissioners.
But once they voted on it and it passed, then we would be tasked officially with that.
Yes. Yeah.
Official.
Yeah. So the Board of Commissioners can task us with anything. If they want to task us with, figure out, how many people would, go fishing at Bay Shore instead of Anita Ford. Anything. If they had any question that they wanted us to work on, that's what we're here for, is to give them the information.
Couldn't they just save us the time and go ahead and officially task us?
With that?
With Parks and Rec, like you had said, like you mentioned.
Well, so I believe that, well, we have to get it to them somehow. You know what I'm saying? We would want to get it to them officially. That at the last meeting, the Board of Commissioners voted on adding the planning board to the official agenda. So now at the Board of Commissioners meeting, we will be on their agenda to give our, this is what we're doing. They'll have an opportunity to ask questions, whatever. And that won't just be me. I mean, I could do it the first time, and it's very casual. It's much like it is here, right? I come to the meetings, I sit where Mike is sitting. If somebody has a question about the planning board, the mayor always says, Ms. Hall, what, do you want to answer that? And it works very well. So now it's just going to be official. So there will always now be a planning board member assigned, and I'll make a list, for everybody. I'd like to see everybody there. But there will be somebody who will, each month will be a different person who will be, doing the presentation, whatever it is. Okay, everybody's good with that?
Yeah,
okay.
That's great.
So if there's anybody who doesn't, is uncomfortable with it, then no, you just don't have to speak.
No, I think that'd be great. I think that'd be fun to do.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah. It's very interesting to watch this machine work, in a small town like this. The budget meetings are like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but frankly, they're fascinating. It's down to the penny, and I mean, it's really amazing. So. Anybody got anything? Mike? He's raised his hand.
Just a couple of things.
Yeah.
One, just in general, I'm supportive of a much broader role for the planning board going forward and looking at things, not just simply subdivisions, site plans, commercial site. But comment on, excuse me, I jumped out of the shower and down there and left my glasses. So I'm having trouble reading my notes here. But that we should be forward thinking and trying to look down the road 5, 10 years and what's this town, what would I like to see it look like? And a couple of comments on these parks. I would welcome this group to take up the Bahia Lane site up there. I've been successful 8 or 10 years ago in getting something there. Have a nice elaborate park, but they don't have 50% support, and I wasn't going to spend the kind of money we were having, so perhaps that would be something that this board could make some recommendations to. And also, the ordinances give a lot of latitude for you to offer things without having getting direction from the board.
Mhm.
So if you read those 145 things,
Yeah.
you do the search thing, you'll see there's plenty of places where they suggest the planning board can make recommendations. And the last thing, this is the first time I've heard this, but I've always wanted some kind of a little beach. What's used right now on Manatee Street, a lot of people take the kayaks and boats. When at low tide, there's a sandbar just out there, but it's pretty deep getting to it. It's about 4 feet even at low water.
Yeah.
But there's more kids out there than any other place.
Mhm.
But that's only at low tide. Number two, you have to really get involved with Heather Steinman and Cam to see what kinds of things they would allow. The closest thing we do have to the beach is Boat Sound Drive. You go over there by there probably 2 or 3 days a week on the water. In the summertime, always somebody over there. And a lot of times just half a dozen people swimming. That's one of the things that's bulkheaded. The steps go right into the water. It's at low tide, it's just, the bottom step is just about where the water, at high tide is 2 or 3 feet. And they go out to waste it very quickly. But if there was something that we could do that would use those properties at the end of the street a little better, and I'm not advocating for one. Anita Ford's a good suggestion because that's the widest. That's 100 feet wide, where the other ones are only 60 feet wide. So those are great things for planning board to be thinking about, you know. I guess. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to say, and this is a personal thing, that I think this UDO and the land use plan, you know, if there's a lot of changes to be made to these things, I don't know that we should be rushing it. All the changes we've made over the years, 50 or 100 changes that have been deliberate, thought out, and slow. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast, and I don't know that it would be appropriate to take a bunch of things and stick them through without a whole lot of thought and consideration and comment.
Well, I'm honestly, I'm not talking about adding. That's not what I'm talking about that we do as we go through this. I'm talking about pulling out the things that we already know we don't do. It's just still sitting there. You know, these, you know, the things like about the variance, about the number of packages that we have to, you know, that somebody has to provide. You know, it says 10 in the ordinance, but, you know, we only require 5. All those things that we already know that we don't do, right? I mean, let's just, if we're not doing it and we have no intention of doing it, let's pull it out. So I would say at this first swipe that we just pull out, you know, we just reduce before we add.
Yeah, I'm not talking about things like where it says town administrator,
Yeah.
code enforcement officer, where it's obviously incorrect. I'm talking about substantive changes
Yeah.
to the ordinance that haven't been reviewed.
Mhm.
by this board,
Right.
thought out, had discussion in public hearing.
Mhm.
That's all I got.
And actually, I see that Wanda Fowler is on. She is the chairman of the Board of Adjustments. Wanda, have you been on the whole time? Have you kind of listened in on the issue with the Board of Adjustment?
Actually, Susan, I've been on in the last 20 minutes or so. I forgot you guys were on tonight, so I wanted to pick it up as soon as I remembered.
Okay, so I will go ahead and I'll send you the little blurb that I had on the board that kind of talked about, it looked like it was saying the planning board should do something that the Board of Adjustment is doing. So I just think it's something that maybe we should consider pulling out of the Code of Ordinance. And I'll send it to you.
Okay, and are you saying that in the current UDO or the new document that there are
No,
overlapping responsibilities perhaps? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it does show that there's overlapping responsibilities, but only on paper. Do you know what I'm saying? We don't really have an overlapping responsibility in action.
No, our roles are very distinct and very different.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll send you the little, what I'm talking about, and like I said, I'll bring it up at the steering committee meeting too. That it's probably something, good that we just pull it out completely, because it is a little confusing.
Okay, yeah, send it to me because I didn't get in when you were discussing that, so I'm not really sure to what you're referring. So if you would send that to me, that'd be great.
Sure. And where it says Zach Seffi, is that actually Zach? Oh, that's you. Okay, on his computer. Commissioner Martin, you have anything? Okay, anybody got anything else? Okay, I think that's all we have. Just want to move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Sarah, let's go ahead and take a vote on adjournment. Sarah Wax is a yes. Cameron's a yes. Bruce?
Yes.
This is a yes. Susan Hull is a yes. Paxson?
Yes.
Is a yes. So we are adjourned.